When we look at any major industrial project, our eyes are usually drawn to the big stuff, right? The massive steel structure, the shiny high-performance coating, the finished product. But what if I told you that the entire success of that project, everything, hinges on a step that happens right at the very beginning, a step that's so often overlooked? Well, today we're talking about pre-cleaning, and you're about to find out why it's the absolute foundation for everything else.
And listen, that is not an exaggeration. This quote really gets right to the point. Poor surface preparation is the #1 reason coatings fail, period. What you do in these very first moments will decide whether a protective coating lasts for years and years or fails in just a few months. It all starts right here.
So before we even dream about blasting or painting, we've got to understand why this pre-cleaning step is so critical, why it's completely non-negotiable. It's really all about preventing a total disaster from being built right into the project from day one.
Okay, so this right here, this visualizes the enemy that's hiding in plain sight. Imagine you apply a perfect, expensive top coat over a surface that has invisible salt contamination. Well, those salts, they love water. They are designed to attract it. They will literally pull moisture right through the coating itself, creating this incredible pressure from underneath. And the result, as you can see, is blistering and peeling. The coating is literally pushed off the surface because it never really had a chance to bond in the first place.
So the takeaway here is that this is not just some small cosmetic issue. Contamination actively prevents the coating from sticking. It causes it to peel away in sheets. It even messes with the coating's ability to flow out smoothly over the surface. You get these little defects called fisheyes. And worst of all, it basically traps all the ingredients needed for rust right up against the steel. This is a massive structural and financial failure just waiting to happen.
Now, if you're going to win this fight, you have to know your enemy. And the contaminants that are out to ruin your coating project, well, they fall into two very different categories. Let's take a look.
On the left, you've got the obvious stuff, the visible contaminants, like oil and grease. You can see it, you can feel it. It's pretty easy to understand why paint just isn't going to stick to that. But then you look to the right, and that is the much more dangerous threat, the non-visible contaminants. We're talking about soluble salts like chlorides and sulfates. You can't see them at all, but like we just saw, they can do even more damage.
And this chart breaks it down perfectly. The visible stuff, the oil and grease, that's mostly an adhesion problem. The non-visible salts, on the other hand, that's a corrosion problem. They're actively trying to make the steel rust from underneath the paint. And here is the single most important difference for anyone on a job site. You can spot grease with your own 2 eyes. But to find those salts, you absolutely have to have specialized test equipment. You just can't manage what you don't measure.
All right, so now we know the why and the what. Let's get into the how. The good news is the industry has a really well-defined playbook with specific standards and methods to fight these threats head-on.
The first page in that playbook is a document called SSPC-SP. You can think of it as the official rulebook for solvent cleaning, and its mission is super simple. Get rid of all the visible stuff. The standard is crystal clear on what you need to achieve. When you're done, that surface has to be totally free of visible oil, grease, dust, dirt, and other visible soluble contaminants. There's no gray area.
And this is often what it looks like. Now, it might seem as simple as just wiping a beam with a rag, but don't let that fool you. SSPC-SP actually lays out several methods, from wiping and scrubbing to full-on immersion or steam cleaning, and the technique is everything. You might use a 2-rag method, for example, just to make sure you're not spreading the contamination around. It's a real technical procedure, not just a quick wipe down.
This table gets at a really important idea. You've got to use the right tool for the right job. For oil and grease, the playbook says use solvent cleaning. Follow the rules of ASP1. But for dirt and those invisible salts we talked about, the weapon of choice is freshwater washing or pressure washing, which is covered by a different standard. You wouldn't use a hammer to drive a screw, and you definitely don't use solvents to get rid of salts.
Okay, so we have the rules, we have the methods, but who's the one making sure all of this is actually being done correctly out on the job site before that first can of primer is even opened? Well, that brings us to the final crucial piece of this puzzle, the inspector.
The answer is the coating inspector. Their role is so much more than just looking at the final paint job. In fact, their most critical work happens right here, at the beginning, verifying that this foundational pre-cleaning work is done exactly to the project specifications.
And the inspector's job here isn't a one-and-done thing. It's a continuous process that happens at key hold points in the project.
They have to inspect for contaminants before any abrasive blasting starts, because blasting can actually drive grease and oil deeper into the steel. Then they inspect again after the blasting is done but before the first drop of paint is applied. And they even inspect for contaminants between each and every coat of paint. It's a constant state of watchfulness.
This gives you a fantastic before and after look at the inspector's role. Before any work starts, they're on the lookout for that visible oil and grease, and they're making sure the team understands the rules for non-visible salts, how to test for them, and what the acceptable limits are. Then, after the cleaning, they're verifying. They confirm that all the visible stuff is gone, and then they use their test equipment to prove that the salt levels are below that maximum allowed level.
When you boil it all down, this is the simple, fundamental truth. You can have the most advanced, most expensive coating in the world, but if the surface underneath is dirty or contaminated, that system is absolutely destined to fail. The pre-cleaning phase isn't just a preliminary step, it is the primary step.
So as we wrap this up, let me just leave you with this one thought. We've established that the most destructive threats, those soluble salts, are completely invisible to the naked eye. And that raises a really important question for anyone involved in a coatings project. Are you just looking for a clean surface, or are you truly verifying it? Because real confidence in your foundation, it doesn't come from what you can see. It comes from knowing you've eliminated the threats that you can't.